What is something you witnessed as a child and didn't realize was really fucked up until you remembered it many years later? Quick backstory. I was about 5 years old and the year prior my mother had contracted West Nile. Due to severe encephalitis her optic nerves were crushed and she was left blind. One evening I was trying to find my mom so she could tuck me into bed, but she was nowhere to be found. For some reason I had the idea to check outside. I saw her about 2 blocks away standing in the middle of the street without her cane. I was very confused, so I ran inside to get Dad. When he came out and ran to her he looked like he was having a really hard time convincing her to come to him. He also yelled at me to go back inside. It wasn't until about 16 or 17 did I realize what had really happened that evening. My mother was attempting to get hit by a car to try to kill herself. She is much happier now and has accepted what life flung at her. She's a very happy woman most days and I hope one day she will be able to see again. My stepdad strangling my mom. I came out of my room, saw him on top of her with his hands around her throat, and she was turning purple and making noises. I told her to keep it down because she woke me up and went back to bed. I didn't think about it much after that. It didn't hit me until my early 20s that oh shit my stepdad was in the process of actually trying to murder my mom. And I told her to die quieter. 3 or 4. Lived in Iceland. Had a babysitter. She was nice enough. One day had a bunch of her friends over. Like 3 dudes. She said if I stayed in my room all day she would take me to Wendy's or some shit. Probably. I'd do anything for Wendy's. Didn't think much of it. Never saw her again after that day. Find out later from my parents that they got home early one day to find my babysitter in their bed with a bunch of dudes. Straight up gangbang. So yeah, that was interesting to recall when I found out. Dad used to go out with friends every Friday night. My mom, brother, and I would always go out for pizza and it was fun, but I wished my dad wanted to spend time with us. Both parents are dead now. I'm 34 and I learned that my dad was seeing other women all the time. My mother just accepted it and stayed stable for me and my bro. Pretty much everyone in my family knew this was going on but nobody called out my dad's bullshit. At the time I thought he just had good friends. Went to the recycling center with my mum and brother when I was about 5 to 6 years old. We were midway through sorting out and recycling when my mum suddenly told us to get in the car and we drove off quite abruptly. My mum told us that there was a naked man in the bushes watching us, and at the time I just thought it was quite weird / funny. I guess I was as much a part of this as I was a witness. When I was maybe 8 years old I was in Cub Scouts for a short while. On a camping trip in the middle of the night, one of the adult leaders pulled me and another boy out of our tents to go to the campground showers. I remember being confused since I didn't think I had gotten that dirty, and it was a weird time and place to be taking a shower as it was something I only ever did at home. At the showers I went down to my underwear, but was too shy to take it all off. I think the other boy did the same, but I honestly don't remember what the adult did. Maybe I didn't want to look. As far as I remember, I got back to the tent without much else happening, but I don't know about the other boy. This was in the early 90s, and I didn't think much about this event until like a few years ago. I thought it was perfectly normal for mothers to ignore their kids for weeks at a time. This lasted until my father drove across country in a busted up Toyota he bought when my mother dumped me at her grandparents while she moved to Hawaii with her boyfriend, who was a fan of beating the shit out of her. She tried to reconnect a decade after the fact, but I had since replaced her with my paternal grandmother. When I was in the 5th grade my mother was dating this drug addict. He went on to steal all our savings and left my mother. One day in the winter I stayed home from school. I heard a struggle going on and my mom saying no. When I came out of my room my mom's boyfriend was on top of her with a knife to her throat. They both looked at me and my mom starts yelling telling me to go back to bed. So I do. I called my dad and told him that they were having a fight again and mentioned a knife. My dad got there in record time. Never seen him move so fast. He ended up throwing the boyfriend down the stairs and I went to my grandma's house for a couple weeks. I was taken to the pediatrician when I was around 9 to 10 because I had a sore throat. My mom stayed in the waiting area with my siblings. The nurse came in for vitals, and then the doc came in after a bit and sent the nurse to a different patient. He asked basic questions, and then he helped me to disrobe. He felt my breasts, or lack of, and repeatedly stuck his fingers in my vaginal area as part of the exam, which took several minutes. After, he told me to get dressed. Then the nurse came back in later to do a swab for strep. I was so scared to disobey an adult. I never said a word about it. When I was about 4, I was grocery shopping with my grandpa. I somehow got separated from him and was wandering around lost asking people where my grandpa was. Some guy said, "Your grandpa is outside. I will take you to him." So I follow him outside. He tells me my grandpa is in his truck, so he is opening the door for me to get in. Next thing I know, the guy gets thrown up against his truck. I look over and there is my grandpa strangling the guy. He called him a sick fuck and said if he ever sees him around town again he will kill him. I was that close to putting the lotion on my skin. Watching my mom's friend Odd and her boyfriend telling us she's just sleeping and having a bad dream. She later in the evening died on the couch, and we had the cops and fire truck and ambulance at our house in the middle of the night because this dude was too scared to take her to the hospital. My buddy's mom worked at a doctor's office, and as part of her job would frequently call in prescriptions to the pharmacy under DR's orders. Well, sometime later, when her own kids got sick, rather than taking them to the doctor to get the proper treatment, she'd just call in an antibiotic to the pharmacy under the guise of her former position at the doctor office. Our parents had a neighbor who lived by himself after his wife died in a large Victorian-style house. In the attic, he kept a life-size female mannequin that he dressed in provocative attire, something he showed to my brother and me when we helped him organize a tag sale. Just the living conditions of the homes my childhood friends lived in. As a child, you're so innocent and completely oblivious to any obvious, overt drug use/abuse. Shady people. ECT. Never witnessed anything too crazy, but still looking back now I'm like, yikes lol. When I was 7 years old I witnessed a crazy guy with a gun firing shots out of his window into the street in a crowded part of a suburban neighborhood. It was summertime and there were a lot of people out and about. He only hit one person, who fortunately survived. But it was a scene of mass panic with people running around and gunshots ringing out. I was up close. A friend of my parents grabbed me and took me into a house as shots were fired. I can still remember a bullet hitting a brick wall right behind me. I was at an age where I had clear memories of it, but for some reason did not associate it with being a traumatic event. It was never a big secret or anything, but the first time I actually ever told the story to someone was in college. Describing the situation to a group of people was the first time I actually realized how messed up a situation that was. Saw some old man beating off in the forest. I didn't understand what I had seen until several years later. When I was really young, elementary school, me and my sister got our own cameras. Mine was Looney Tunes themed and said things like "What's up, Doc?" when you push the button to take a picture. And my sister had a Barbie one that said things like "Let's go shopping." We'd had them for a full year before the Barbie camera went missing. My sister didn't know where it was for at least a full summer. We find it again one day in her closet. It was spring. I remember because my walks from the bus stop to the house were pleasant, and it was the first year I was allowed to take the walk by myself. The film for the Barbie camera was processed, and a week later my parents sit me and my sister down for a serious talk. The camera had developed and some of the pictures on it were being called into question. We were explained that the police were going to be at our house the following day to talk to us about them. I was so scared. I remember crying on the bus on the way home. They found various pictures of two little girls, from the shoulders down, wearing nothing but underwear. I still have no idea how these pictures were taken. My sister claims she has no idea either. But we ended up telling the police that we had taken them ourselves after they pressured us about it. I wasn't even old enough to wear bras yet and didn't recognize the ones worn in the photos. I was never abused as a child. And as far as I know, neither was my sister. Sometimes I think about it and I can't figure out WTF happened. Where was the camera for so long? Who were the girls in the pictures? Who took the pictures? Did I black something out of my memories? I doubt this. Or is there something my sister isn't telling me? I'm 25 now, but I don't think I'm ever going to get any answers. My dad would often get drunk at home alone and watch porn on VHS in the living room. When mom came home with us kids, we'd find him masturbating unashamedly on the couch. I never understood why my mom got so upset. It wasn't like he was hurting anyone. As a kid, I never understood why they got into big arguments over this. But as an adult, holy shit, that shit fucked me up. I was very young. Don't remember the age. But I was leaving a Dollar General store while my dad sat in his truck in the parking lot. I don't remember what I was looking for, but they didn't have it there. Anyway, as I was walking to my dad's truck, some extremely filthy man was sitting in the driver's seat of some beat up rusted out car with a similar looking woman in the passenger seat. He got my attention as I passed with some majorly toothless shit eating grin while pulling a Furby out from being stuffed into the corner of his windshield and dashboard. He never said anything to me, just sort of motioned to come towards him while holding the Furby out the window. Thankfully I had been taught endlessly to never talk to or take things from strangers. So I ignored him and kept walking. The saddest and most fucked up part is that in the car's backseat I could see 2 or possibly 3 dirty looking children. I didn't pay much attention to their facial expressions or anything else about them as I was pretty skeeved out by the man. I never said anything to my dad about it once I got back into his truck. I just got in and we left. Hopefully they were not kidnapped children. But that doesn't really make the situation a whole lot better. Even if they were the man's own children, they had to have been in a pretty poor situation. When I was very young, maybe 5, but I don't remember for sure, I was with my mom who was working at the school library for the summer. The library remained open in the summer for kids to check out books. I was outside playing and eventually wandered off to the other side of the school. One of the janitors opened a back utility door and yelled and asked me if I wanted to come inside and see the back tunnel-like passageways of the school with him. I turned him down, being shy, but looking back, I'm glad I didn't accept. It may have been innocent, but that's a pretty creepy invitation.